I'm Jen.
I'm Carla.
I'm Myrna.
Hi, I'm Anjanette. Welcome, everybody. We're so grateful that you've joined us today at the Latter-day Women Warriors podcast. Today, we've got a potentially juicy conversation for y'all. Today, we're going to cover questions that these three lovely ladies get asked on a frequent basis because of their same-sex attraction, their experience in the church, experiences in the community that we're a part of. And so we're going to go over some of these questions that they get asked on a regular basis. And of course, we would love for you guys to make some comments below and ask your own questions if anything comes to mind. We want this to be an ongoing conversation. And so here we go. Are you ladies ready for these questions?
Absolutely. Bring it on. Bring it on.
All right. Bring it on, girl. Bring it on. Okay. So question number one. What are some of the questions that you guys got when you came out to a trusted friend or somebody that you knew and you trusted? Common questions that you were asked.
So are you like attracted at all to guys? Well, I'm married to a man, so there's at least one. And I'm going to count myself lucky that I found one guy. So yes. And then the other question was a follow-up, which was, can you tell the difference between attractiveness in men? Like Tom Cruise versus, sorry guys, Jack Black or something? They're just not equatable. Sorry, Jack, love you. Sorry, Tom, everyone thinks you're a pretty boy. And like, can you tell that one's more attractive? I'm not blind. I can tell attractiveness levels. I can see this in men. I'm just not like, Tom Cruise, take your shirt off for me. But I'm also not like Jack Black, take your shirt off for me. Like neither end does that for me. Just my man.
One of the questions that I've gotten a lot was kind of to do with that, but like the opposite side, where they first like, oh, have you ever been attracted to a guy? I'm like, not that I can actually think of in like a romantic way. And then the other one is, well, have you recognized like growing up that you were ever attracted to girls? And I was like, oh yes, I've had like lots of different crushes. I had no idea at the time that's what it was. But in my journal, I would even write about it. And if you read it, I'm like, oh wow, how did I not realize from me now going back and reading? I'm like, oh wow, you could replace it with a boy's name and I'd be like writing about my crush. But I had no comprehension of because that's not how I was thinking about it at all. But that's what I would like write about. So it's kind of funny for when I go back and read, I'm like, wow. I was like, good thing no one was like reading it because they've been like, Kyla.
I didn't know that you were same-sex attracted. You're like, what? I didn't know that.
And at the time, like if someone had told me that back in my like teen years, I would have been like, no, I'm not. Like totally been like not trying to convince it, but like I totally thought like, no, that's not true. And, yeah.
So what was the dialogue that you had in your head, like as you were thinking about this person writing it in this journal? Like it's just, no, she's just my super cool friend.
Yeah. Like I'd be like, oh, like I have like this friend that I just want to hang out with all the time. Like I want to be able to sit next to this friend. Like all
Did I Kyla just for you?
Oh.
Oh, that's awesome. Yes. Okay. So yeah. You was just like, I just want to be around this person a lot. I just think they're super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, but there are more feelings underneath it. Sorry. Go ahead, Myrna.
No, go ahead. You can finish.
But there were more feelings underneath it than just a good friend. Like there are more that now I can be like, oh, that's what it was. By the time there was so much shame that I'm like, no, not real.
Yeah, for me, what most people asked is, what does that mean for your marriage? What does that mean for your membership in the church? And I'm like, I'm not leaving my husband. I'm not leaving the church. I'm just sharing what these feelings that are making me confused about, the gospel, or about what am I supposed to do? Excuse me, what am I supposed to do with all these feelings, right? How does it work? Where am I going with it? It wasn't that they all thought that I'm walking away and running away and got to find a girl and go head off to somewhere. I don't know. But I'm like, no, I'm not going anywhere. And that's what I got from everybody. It's like, oh, so what does that mean for your marriage? Or what does that mean for your place in the church? Or, so yeah, that was really the one that everybody asked, right? Everybody said that. Then there were a bunch of different things, but that was one that everybody I talked to asked that same question.
That's really interesting. Did you get asked that, Jen and Kyla?
Go ahead if you have an answer, Kyla.
So up until like this last year or so, like I had mostly only come out to like my family and extended family. And I did that in either I had written several different like letters that I kind of would update and read that to the person, or have them read it when I talked to them. And it kind of talked about my stance in the church and all. So I kind of like was answering those questions in that. And so then sometimes they would like clarify, but I felt like I was like showing that like when I first came out with what I had written. But I have gotten that question a lot more as I've been more open and more out just generally, that people ask about that.
Interesting.
I think that those questions didn't end up to me, but I know now from conversations of people that they were having them with other people about it. So what do you think that means for Jen and her marriage? What do you think that means? Like, it's not fair to him that she would keep him in this marriage or something, and that, I should just go off and live my gay life. Those were the comments happening that people later told me were going on. But nobody directly, I guess, felt the nerve to come ask me those questions myself.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So question number 2. Have any of you ever been attracted to a boy?
Well, I'm married, so there was one. But it's a truth that when I was growing up, there were a couple of boys that I had a crush on and maybe briefly dated. And when I say that, that was like teenage years of a week. But there was nothing that drew me in like, oh my gosh, he's so gorgeous. Oh my gosh, this is what I have. This is what I want. It was just like, people are dating and I think the guy's kind of cool. And when you think the guy's kind of cool and he thinks you're cool, then you go out on a date. So it was fulfilling that societal kind of space, but it was always finding the guy attractive in some way in his personality and whatnot. And so when I'm about to say this, when I don't say this very often, but there was one guy when I was in high school that I met through a mutual person. And we started to kind of double date. And this guy was like a year older than me. So I was a junior, he was a senior graduating. And we were hanging out. I was dealing with crap stuff in my life, like a lot of mental health and other stuff issues. Mm-hmm. And one day, my best friend growing up, she had gone off to college and was home from college. So we decided to hang out. And she's like, so are you seeing anyone? And I was like, yeah, I'm seeing this guy. I guess I'm seeing him, but I wouldn't have said he was my boyfriend. And she's like, how long have you been seeing him? And I was like, oh, well, we kind of went on a date here, and I counted. We've been seeing each other for 8 months. 8 months. I had no clue that it was 8 months. I never would have turned to my boyfriend. I never held his hand. I never kissed him. I was like, maybe there was something to that. I liked him. In fact, he wanted me to come up to Berkeley where he was going to school to hang out for a weekend. Yeah, that wasn't going to fly. He liked me that much. And I now feel really bad because obviously I had a few issues with that situation. But that's how it really was with any guys except my husband.
Yeah. I never thought any of the guys were ever cute. To me, they were friends because I get along way better with men than I do with women, so to speak. And I think it's because I can be myself around men because I'm not trying to pick them up. And if they're trying to pick me up, it ain't going to work. So it doesn't matter. So I had a lot of really good friends that were men, right? And so I think some of them thought we were dating. I wasn't engaged to one guy before my husband, but it wasn't because I thought he was hot or it was just like, well, we've been dating this time. Okay, well, okay, let's do this. And it was like,
so encouraging, Mama. So encouraging.
It was kind of like, no, I need to, you know, go on a mission. And so, and then, you know, he wasn't around when I came back. But it wasn't like I thought he was. It's not like when I saw my husband and I said, oh, now he's hot. And those words had never come across my lips in reference to any man in my life. And that's when I knew I needed to figure this one out because I did think she was hot. But other than that, never. There was just not anyone ever. I don't know why he is, but no one else ever was. So I'm a one-man woman.
And that's good, Myrna. I'm glad that we all know that now. You're not open marriage. You're not polyamorous. You're a one-woman man. All right. Good job.
No, here.
For me, so the only attraction I've had has not been to a living person. It was a cartoon character from Avatar: Last Airbender, Zuko.
He's
like
so hot.
honestly,
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like he's like not a real person. But I haven't had
the guy in real life is hot too, for the record. The actor who plays him.
actor.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just for the record. Just saying. Not important.
So him, like, and I think it's more of like his like spoiler alert, his character arc.
Yeah.
And I think it's more of like all the qualities within that. But I haven't had any like romantic or sexual feelings towards like a real life man ever.
But does that count?
What?
Is he's not because it's a character?
Oh no, I count him because there's one.
Okay, well, if you're gonna kill him,
and you said, come on, say it.
Or
it means that Kyla, you need to find somebody in your real life who has a big burn mark on their eye.
It's not a burn mark. Not that that's a total, yeah, but I think it's a lot more the
character arc. His character does go through a really cool arc. It's true.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I have to add Thor into that if we're going to talk about celebrity crushes. But I don't like Chris Hemsworth. I like Thor. So
see, there you go.
Thor's hot too.
So are we talking like first movie Thor? Or are we talking like fifth movie Thor? Because there is a character arc change with him too.
Well, not before he got fat.
Ouch.
Well, he does.
He
In
does.
Infinity Game, he totally does.
I know he does. I know he does. He goes beer belly.
Yeah, the Thor before that.
Okay.
Okay.
The non-depressed Thor.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
The real man Thor.
That's fair.
Not
Okay.
the woke. Not the woke Thor.
So I can feel it in the listening audience as we speak. So all of you have had some minor attractions to individuals that are men.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you guys identify or label yourselves as same-sex attracted versus being bisexual?
The question. Hard-hitting third one, Anjanette. Hard-hitting third one.
For me, it's simply because it's only been one man. It's not like, and that one just, knocked me off the top of the head, right? It wasn't like I looked at anybody else, any other guy. But if you want to talk about women, then, my whole wall will be full of marks of women that I thought were hot, right? So it's the balance of the difference in the balance, right? It was one man, but, I couldn't even fit all of the women in one hand that I have thought,
Okay.
I would
That's
agree
how
with
I
that.
that's how I look at it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that if there's a super attractive woman, I might not notice Zuko for a little bit. Like, it's such a disproportionate balance, and where I can like name all crushes I had growing up, and will sometimes like forget that I even experience same-sex attraction when I'm just going throughout life, and then like, oh, that woman's really attractive, and notice that. That's never happened with a guy. Like, I never am like distracted by their handsomeness or anything. But that's happened many, many times with women.
Yeah, and I venture to guess, and I don't know if Jen would say this, but I think I would say this, that if I didn't nurture my relationship with my husband, just because I think he's hot, if I didn't nurture it, the way that I feel about women and what I think about when I think about them on a constant basis, it would overpower my feelings for my husband.
I agree with that to a degree. That as you nurture that relationship with your spouse, your husband, that if you didn't constantly work at that, and it's so easy to do the other direction. It's just a more natural kind of state. And as of your question, I think for me, why I don't use the term bisexual, I know I've talked to a lot of people who identify as bisexual. And I even have people that are relatives that experience bisexuality. And they tend to talk about it as in percentages, like I'm 20% attracted to men, 80% attracted to women. And they really find that pull and that draw towards both of them. Where for me, in those early years of teenagers growing up, I think a lot of that was just being a teenager and trying to figure things out. And I did what it seemed everyone was doing. And that's what, like, you start dating. And for me, I'm a girl, so I started dating boys. That's just the way it kind of was.
Right.
And that's just what I did. And eventually, though, I did come out way later after I'd been married for 20 years. And once I kind of had that awakening and allowed myself to even like look at it all, oh yeah, I was having attractions towards women and just being like, I have a really close, good friend. And why do I now, after spending time, want to hold her hand? That doesn't seem like a thing that you do with friends. You don't, when you're in your 30s, you don't hold hands with your friends. You do that when you're like 10 or 12, maybe 15, because your girlfriends are all walking along doing stuff. But that's not something you do in your 30s.
Not here in our culture anyway.
Not here in our culture anyways. And that is a good caveat there. Not in our culture here. And I started to recognize that, yes, oh my gosh, I have attractions towards women. And that is where it sits. There were no other ones that were happening towards men. And that really, in that type of romantic way, has only ever been relegated to my husband. So for me, I don't even talk about it as in percentages because my husband's one out of all the other women, really, in my book. So that doesn't sound bisexual to me. That sounds like I'm same-sex attracted and happen to find an opposite sex partner, and love is love.
And can I add, like we've been like describing physical characteristics of that, but for me at least, a lot of it is like the emotional connection. Like that's where a lot of like the deep attraction happens, is that emotional level. Because a woman can be physically attractive, but she's a jerk, like that attraction like tanks real fast.
Yeah.
And so that emotional sexual attraction, or however you want to call it, like that's the main attraction, I guess. That makes sense.
Makes perfect sense.
Well, and
Which
I
is the
will-
perfect segue into our question, which is, how did you guys recognize your feelings of same-sex attraction when you were growing up?
Well, I think Myrna and Kyla can talk more to that because I didn't realize them growing up. I had a small stint my junior year of high school where I thought about it. I've said that before. And other than that, I came out in my mid to late 30s. And that was kind of like a powerhouse moment because it was like I had repressed all of these feelings inside. Like I hadn't really ever fully gone through puberty. And once I came to this awakening of my attractions and how I was attracted and how it felt in my body and how I experienced it through emotions and all those facets and sensations, then I was like, oh crap, nobody should go through puberty in their mid 30s. Nobody should do that. That is a crazy experience because it's like taking years of being a teenager and squishing it into a shorter time frame. And so you feel all these mental things. I couldn't even like walk down a street without like seeing a woman being like, oh my gosh, stop thinking about her in that way. Oh my gosh, there's another one. I was like, oh my gosh, you just need to not leave the house. You are not fit. You're not fit to leave this house, because it was almost that overwhelming in a feeling.
In all fairness, you can make that argument of teenagers too.
Yes, I just didn't get to have that experience as a teenager. And now I totally understand why the prophets really did say all those stuff to us as teenagers. It just didn't have the effect on me. It instead had the effect when I was in my 30s. Oh, that's why. Oh, is this what teenagers feel all the time? Oh, that's just wrong. That is just wrong. That is just horrible. I feel so bad for you. There was a lot of compassion towards them.
I had a similar experience with that when I was like first hit puberty, and I started to like have these different feelings towards my friends, like wanting to kiss or hold hand, or like different like arousal type feelings that I was like, that's maybe not normal. And so I like buried it all and totally thought I was straight until I was 26. And I had that same, like, once I was like, I'm attracted to women, and couldn't like just set it aside. And it was like the floodgates opened of all of those feelings that when I was a teenager I didn't have, and then suddenly I'm 26 and feel like a young teenage child, but I'm an adult, and so I'm like, hey, how does this happen? And yeah, just the overwhelming emotions and everything. And I finally understood why, like growing up, like girls would be like, oh, there's a belly, and like giggle, and I'd be like, oh yeah, like copy. But I was like delayed, and I didn't realize how much I was pretending, because I didn't realize that's what was happening. I just thought that was like, it was exhausting to like be thinking about boys or all that. And girls would talk about, oh, they're like, what boy are you attracted to? Oh, this guy. And they'd always talk about it. I'm like, why are we talking about this again? Like, like, oh, okay, there isn't really any, and they'd like want to talk about it all the time. And so then once I realized I had these attractions to women, I'm like, oh, I get why you would giggle, like, oh, there's an attractive woman. Like, I get those feelings that I had never experienced growing up. And suddenly they made sense. I'm like, oh, it's a natural reaction. It's not work to do that. Those other girls weren't putting energy into that. It just happened. I'm like, oh, I now get why they do those different behaviors and giggle or stuff like that.
Yeah. For me, okay, I'm going to be very honest here and vulnerable here, so please still love me. I was in a family full of girls. Okay, so I just thought that I loved all these girls like I do my sisters, just because they're I like girls, right? I got a family full of them, right? But when I started to realize that there was a little bit more than that, and then I was disobedient, so to speak, and started experimenting with some women that are girls that we're willing to experiment with. And I realized that those feelings that I feel when a girl kisses me, or when she holds my hand, or when she hugs me, or when she cuddles with me, or when she whatever with me, are what heterosexual people feel for each other. They get married. I was like, okay, I'm in super trouble now, because I like this. This is fulfilling what I like, what I want. But it feels good. I like it. And so I lived two different lives, so to speak. There was the Myrna, my family, my warden, and the Myrna that played sports and had male friends and girlfriends hidden in my life. So I wasn't very honest. Teenage into college years, there was two different, maybe even three different Myrnas hanging around. It was hard to juggle, to be quite honest with you. There was a lot of emotional stress in my life. I didn't know that's what it was. I was just trying to make sure my family didn't find out, because my dad was in leadership. He wasn't bishop at the time. He wasn't bishop until I went on my mission, but he was in the high council, and he was elders club president, and he was all those things, right? That in leadership where people saw him, and he had a family full of girls, and they all went to church, and my mom always made sure we had nice dresses that she handmade for us to wear. And so they saw that Myrna, and I know because my dad was this amazing man and my mom was this amazing person, that was always asking the day girls to do things in the ward, right? And so there was this two different people that I was juggling, and I just don't do that. I'll just tell everybody here, don't do it. It's not easy. It's hard. And still to this day, I have some guilt about it. I have some guilt that maybe I talked people into, or didn't talk to people, or I was an example to people that wasn't real. Anyway, I still have some guilt about that. Anyway, so I didn't do the right things. I didn't shove it down, right?
I don't know if that's the right thing, Myrna.
Well,
the right thing.
I don't know whether to say it's the right thing or not, but when you're a member of our church, if you experiment, it's just really hard to come back. And so I don't suggest any experimenting. That's just me. That's just me.
No, I would agree. I would agree with that. that if you're acting out and you're looking at experiencing, you've seen how hard it is to then come back. And when we say come back, that means what? Like full membership in the church, that
Well, make yourself right with God.
make yourself right with God. Okay. Where
Because
the other idea of like just repress it all and just keep it all stuffed in, that isn't sustainable. That's just not sustainable. At some point it is going to come up, and it's better that you face it and face the reality of what that means in your life and what that means to you in your religious life, and figure out what's important to you and how you're going to choose to live your life. No matter what, you have to do that.
I think that neither one of them are sustainable. Neither one of them sustainable, because I wasn't being myself.
Right.
I was two different people. I was having stress about that. I had to remember what I told my family, right? Yeah. And then I had to remember what I told my girlfriends. And I just it was a hard,
right.
It was a hard life. But I made it.
Yeah, so both options are not,
but neither one's good.
And with the suppressing one, so you can't like suppress just one topic. There were after I realized I was attracted to women and I had like buried that down, there was a lot of other stuff that had nothing at all to do with same-sex attraction that I've been working on in counseling, that I'm like, oh, okay. There was also other stuff that was buried down there at that. Yeah. And so it's not just going to be the one thing, it's going to be lots of stuff, because you can't, kind of like if you numb, you can't just numb one thing. Your whole, like, everything is going to become numb.
Yeah. And that's why I will tell people, find someone you trust to talk to about it, right? Don't hold it in. Don't make yourself have two different lives, but talk to someone and say, this is what's going on. Can you help me understand? Or what do you think about this? And have some true and honest discussions with someone that you trust. Because I think that's way more healthy than either one of these two options. But we're not therapists, but we've been through this, and we would say that is way more healthy than, I don't know. If there's a therapist listening that would say that's not true, please let us know, because I really think that it is. I'm willing to learn if it's not.
And I would say, help people at your own pace. Don't try to do like too quickly, because you'll be learning as you go. And you can never take the words back once you've told someone. So make sure you get like a foundation of trusted people, so that inevitably when someone reacts badly, you can go back to that foundation of support and not be totally devastated by one person's reaction. That's way more about them than you, but having that base support for you.
But even if you just have one person that you do trust and everything goes good when you tell, you don't need a whole bunch of them, right? That one can help you until you can feel safe enough to maybe find another person also. But you don't have to tell everybody. You don't have to stand on the rooftop and yell it out to everybody, right?
I would say it's almost harmful to like too quickly, because then you get so many voices with so many different opinions. But having trusted people who have your best interest in mind, I think is very important.
So, next question. Do you think your parents knew growing up that you experienced same-sex attraction?
Wow. I haven't actually gotten that question before. Thank you, Anjanette.
I know that mine did not. When I sat down, when I actually ended up telling my parents, because my Voices of Hope video was coming out the next day. So I ran down to their house to let them know before someone else showed it to them before they knew. And I told them, and my dad, just the look on his face, I know he didn't know, right? My mom, she didn't say whether she knew or not. But she did say, I'm really sorry you had to go through that alone. So I don't know whether she knew, or but she spent more time with us than my father because he is out working. Not that he wasn't a good dad. He was there. But she spent more time with us. And we had more discussions of, Mom, I don't want to do ballet. Mom, I would rather go play baseball. Mom, I would rather play basketball. No, we're going to do ballet because that's what our family does. So she knew about these discussions. So I don't know. She never said yes or no, but I know for sure my dad did not know. I could tell just on his look on his face. And his first comment was, well, do you think your mission helped you to stay in the church? Okay, I just told you that I'm same-sex attracted and you're worried about whether my mission helped me stay in the church. I don't know where we're going with this, but I love you. I was like, yeah, probably. I don't know, Dad, but anyway, that's what I know about my parents.
Okay. Do you think your dad, if you had to guess, what were your dad's feelings about that since he was so quiet about it?
Well, he did say, well, what does Ernie think about this? This is my husband. And I said, well, he knows, and he's okay with me doing the video and talking to people and bringing it out. And he says, well, what does that have to do with your daughter? And I said, well, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to affect them in her. And he said, well, you need to think about that before you make choices. So I don't really know what he was thinking. But don't get me wrong, I love him. But it seemed like he was worried about everybody but me, but maybe I shouldn't have felt like he should have worried about me. I don't know. It was like, I'm telling you this, but you're worried about everybody else in my life. I don't know. Maybe I was just expecting something that shouldn't have been expected. I don't know.
I think that's fair, though. I imagine there's a lot of people when they're coming out to their loved ones and their family members, and again, it has nothing to do with the person coming out. It really does fall back on the person who's hearing the story. But that they are more worried about what society thinks or their family thinks or their friends will think versus being concerned about how the person coming out is feeling, what that experience has been like for them, and how can they be supported. And I think those are very realistic reactions for some people, and it makes me sad because I think there's maybe something, I don't know, just a different experience for you could have happened if they had showed less concern about what other people were thinking and more about what your experience was.
Yeah, I expected my dad had ran into somebody because, by this time he'd been in a stake presidency, he'd been a bishop. And so then I thought he counseled with somebody on the subject, but it didn't seem like he had. So it was more, I think maybe he was answering some questions that even he had because he never had to deal with anybody. But my mom is not, she's not a regular loving mother. Look, not that she didn't love us, but she wasn't there. Oh, you're sick. Come here, sit on my lap. She wasn't like that. She wasn't that lovey, touchy mom, right? But just what came out of her mouth was way more moving to me. When I thought maybe my dad might understand because he might have had someone, and I thought, okay, I don't know what my mom's going to say. I was all ready for my mom to have a big old blow up about it, but because this is us, we never really got along. But she was much more kind and loving about it. And that surprised me. I walked out of there going, okay, what just happened? That's not my regular mom. I don't know what just happened. Right. And then who took my dad? Because I don't know this. That's not normally him. But they'd never had, there's no one in our family that's had something like that. I mean, they've had divorce, they've had that kind of stuff, but they haven't had something like that. So maybe they were just really shocked. And I was trying to get it over with quick because it was coming out the next day. So maybe that was my fault, but I didn't give them more time to digests the information. So it was probably just me. But that's my story.
So I'll let Kyla go next because mine's on the shorter side of it, because my dad died when I was 20. So it was really just when I came out in my late 30s, it was just my mom and sister. And my sister's a wonderful person. And when I told her, she was just like, okay, like new information, and we've just moved forward. And my mom, I think she's of an older generation, which is fine, but there was just kind of a disbelief. So I don't believe that she thought that. I mean, she knew growing up I was a tomboy, and I wish we could just say that word more often these days, because that's what it was.
Yeah.
I was a tomboy. One summer, like I was out in the backyard with my dad pulling apart an engine, and I'd wash my greasy hands off and go inside, and my mom was teaching me to knit. So I just like doing lots of things. And being a kind of under my dad's thumb, because I like doing all of those types of things, mechanical things and whatnot. Telling my mom seemed to come out of nowhere for her. And really the place I think she sits a lot with it is just, how is your marriage? And when I told her we're fine, he knows about it. He knows that I talk about it. And he's fine with that. And that's good with me. So it was information to her. And really, she just tends to worry about what it means for my marriage. But it was a little bit of a shock. And sometimes, truthfully, I'm not 100% sure she believes me.
Yes. Kyla.
So for me, when I had first realized I had these attraction feelings to women, I was really like struggling going through what we call like gay puberty, just all of those repressed feelings that now had been happening. And it had been a few months, and I was just super struggling with those feelings, and then like some of the other stuff that had come up. And so I called my mom, but I was like, hey, I'm not gonna tell her. And then like as I was talking and I was kind of praying, and I was like, well, if she guesses, then I'll tell her, yes, I having these attraction to women. And so I was talking to her, and she actually did. She totally guessed, because I was kind of hinting at like, oh, I'm having a hard time. And she's like, well, is it this? No. Well, is it that? No. And like she guessed, and I was like, actually, yes. Yes. And so, yeah, so she was able to have like a lot of like compassion. And for me, because had not told very many people, but like, I'm like, oh, okay. I was listening to the Spirit. I think my mom was listening to the Spirit. And so that was really nice. And then with my dad, because the question was, did my parents know growing up? I don't know if they knew when I was growing up, but after, and I had told my mom later, like she could tell my dad. And so then a little bit later, my dad and I had a conversation, and we were kind of able to talk about it. And he had said that he had started to think like, that might be a possibility, because I have never been married. And he's like, yeah, I'm getting a little bit older and still not married. Haven't really dated a whole lot. So I started to think that might be a possibility. So that was kind of my parents. Like, yeah, I don't know growing up if they thought that or not. But my dad told me he started to wonder. And I've had other people tell me that. Like, which was my worst nightmare at the time. Like, someone being able to guess that I had these feelings that I wasn't even letting myself think of, that someone could guess that was there. Like, I was so like protective of that, even from myself. And so it was like, I've had several people now tell me that, oh yeah, like some of the different hobbies and stuff you like to do, like that kind of really made sense. Not that having So in hobbies necessarily means that, but
Okay, so Anjanette, I have one last question for you.
Okay.
So Anjanette, when did you know you were heterosexual?
That's actually a really fair question.
Thank you. I've been wanting to ask it for a long time.
Okay, I'm going to give you an honest answer.
Oh.
So I think little bits here and there growing up, I had a crush once in a while on somebody. Equally, well, when I have crushes on people, I'm not somebody who falls for people very easily at all. And so when I do actually develop feelings for somebody, like it sticks for a while. And it's really, really hard for me to get over that if there's not some reciprocated interest. So I just in general in my life, I haven't had too much, like I had all these crushes on people. It's just not in my nature to do that. But I did have a period in my late 20s where I had a very interesting experience. I was really, really struggling with a lot of things in my life. There was a lot of stress coming at me at my life. Wasn't sure what next steps in life. I was having the beginning of some health issues. And I was really, really struggling. And I did a lot of hot yoga at the time, which I can't do anymore, which is very, very sad. I really enjoyed it. But I remember striking up a friendship with a woman in the class, and she was one of the yoga teachers. She was awesome. We would talk a little bit after class, and I just thought she was great. And she was actually listening. She was actually taking an interest in, what was going on in my life. And we developed a friendship. And I remember just there was a lot of things coming at me at that time in my life. And I wondered, like, am I starting to feel attracted to this person? I don't know. Like I don't think I've ever really had that experience before. What's going on here? And started questioning, like, because she was really cool and I loved spending time with her and she was an attractive person. She definitely was. And I remember having a conversation with God in prayer about that experience and going, okay, Heavenly Father, like there's all these things going on in my life. I really struggle to feel attracted to anybody. Like, what is going on here? Like, I don't know what's happening and I need some guidance and some direction. And the Spirit for me, and I'm not speaking for anybody else, this is just my experience. The Spirit said, Satan's trying to confuse you. This is not who you are. And you can decide what you want to do with this experience or not. You can decide how you're going to choose to move forward. And so for me, I made that decision very clearly on that, it is possible for me to be attracted to women. That is a possibility. I'd make the choice for me to not pursue those feelings within myself. And for me, that has worked. I'm not saying that's something that anybody else should put upon themselves. I think my experiences are very different than the experiences that you three lovely ladies have had, for example. And I would not impose that upon anybody. But I did realize and also made a choice at that time in my life. I am going to be interested in men. That's where my life is going to go. One way or the other, whether I get married, whether I don't get married, whether I have relationships there or not, that's where I'm going to let my interest lie. Does that answer that question?
It does.
it does.
I think for some people, attraction is very black and white. And I think for some people, it's not so black and white. And there's a lot of factors that go into what makes somebody attractive to you versus what doesn't make them attractive to you. I think we need to have much more nuanced conversations like this one to better answer these questions for all of us. And with that in mind, we obviously need a part 2 because we've only covered like a fraction of the questions that we have on our list that you guys get commonly asked. And so we're going to call this part 1 good, but please join us for the next time because there's more questions that we haven't even gotten to yet. And we love you. Thank you for joining us in the podcast today and the conversation. Please make some comments below or join us on Facebook to continue the conversation. Ask us questions. We'd love to hear from you guys. And in the meantime, keep standing for truth in the latter days, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.